Hello and welcome to the Aya Om podcast. This episode is about my holistic alignment coaching system. I'll be speaking about the 7 chakras and how I integrate them into the system I use. Now, the 7 chakras are from the yogic science tradition, and there's a vast amount of things I could say about them, but what I'm going to go over today is a brief summary of the chakras and how they correlate to the body-mind, and how I use these for my coaching system by offering practices, coaching, and other forms of guidance so that an individual can have a more balanced and aligned life. I like the term alignment because the chakras are about alignment. They're about balance. There's an aspect of evolution and growth, but in the Taoist systems and in the yogic systems, there's a greater emphasis on just finding harmony. It's kind of like this. If you set a plant in the ideal and proper conditions for its growth, it evolves naturally and easily without force or excessive effort. So too with these systems, if we put ourselves into proper harmony, if we have a good architecture of mind, we're in the right environment, we're living in accordance with the truths that are within us, we will naturally evolve in a really beautiful way. Now the chakra system, there are 7 chakras, and it's a hierarchical system in some sense. There are chakras above and below. And the highest chakra, the 7th chakra, is an organizing principle. Now, I use an organizing principle in my coaching system called One Love. And we can, in some sense, correlate this with the 7th chakra. The similarities are such that when this principle is the highest principle, when you are living in accordance with your highest love, all other energies, all other actions and behaviors, your mind and your body can follow suit. It organizes your energy. It organizes your choices. And everything works well. Because the higher order chakras are about love, truth, your higher imagination, and your path of self-realization or your evolutionary pathway. Now, if we're focused on that, naturally the lower chakras, which accord to worldly desires, pleasure, security, our worldly work, etc., those order themselves. If we're excessively seeking sex, money, power, then all our energy is going to go out there. So we, in a sense, leak the energy out there. And we won't reach, in these yogic systems, the higher levels of our evolution because there are certain aspects of our spiritual development that won't become enacted. That's a part of our potential that we won't reach to because we'll be so concerned with the pursuit of selfish desires, desires for the self, money, sense pleasure, and power. The higher order desires of love are not just about you. They're about the we and the all. And the highest vision for anyone in their life, their highest purpose, is not just about them. Of course, in the grand organization of things, you will have a part to play. Your purpose, your role, this might be your career. But the highest order of development in these systems is about a complete organization of your body and mind. So let's take a look at some of these chakras, what the practices are, what their correlates are with the body, and how I can share with you and guide you through what I might offer an individual as I coach them. One more thing before we dive into that. Chakra means spinning wheel, and they're known as energy centers. These energy centers are not physical. They're not the nervous system. That's the understanding in the yogic sciences. But they run parallel to a lot of structures in the nervous system. And there's a lot of similarities between the energy that runs through the nervous system, which is measurable and understandable and accessible for most to conceptualize and think about, because our nervous system has energy, electromagnetic energy running through it. It is said in the yogic sciences that there's a more subtle vibratory energy known as prana or chi. And this runs in different energy lines known as meridians and nadi pathways, etc. And the energy centers are where the energy, in a sense, whirlpools and gathers in. And from this more subtle energy comes the more gross energy of the nervous system. And from the more gross organization of that nervous system is the interweaving of it into the physical, where it helps to basically be a communication place for information exchange within the body and the environment, from one dimension to another, which is very much what the chakras are. Various dimensions of our life. Various dimensions that we can move through and have experiences. And they're all correlated with different parts of the body. So there's 6 chakras that are in the body, and one that some people classify the scalp as being its zone, but it's above the body. The 6 zones are the legs, according with the first chakra. The second chakra accords with the hips. The third chakra accords with the core. The fourth chakra accords with the heart. The fifth chakra accords with the throat. The sixth chakra accords with the fifth chakra accords with the throat and the face up to the eyes. The sixth chakra is the forehead. The seventh chakra can be the scalp or above the body. So within these regions of the body, you have various different organs as well as glandular centers. And there is some crossover between glands that are both shared. For example, the genitals are part of the first and the second chakra. So it's not necessary to think of these as clear cut in the most, there's some cross convergence here. Now the first chakra is related to a number of different concepts, such as security and safety, such as your tribe and your connection to earth. Your security and safety is very much to do with your financial stability in our modern world. So this is often known as the financial center. Now a chakra has a number of different ways it can be. It can be open or expanding. This is when you're evolving. Or it can be contracted or blocked. And this is when there's something going on mentally, emotionally, or physically in this region of the body. So either the lowest part of the spine, the legs, the correlating structures such as the kidneys, adrenals, and the sex organ. But we can also classify chakras as being balanced. This is when they're in harmony. Overactive or underactive. So we look for balance in these. I'll give you an example of what it might be to be overactive and underactive. Second chakra is a good one for explaining that. So your second chakra has to do with sense pleasure and sexuality. And if it's overactive, you're excessively using this energy from outside of yourself. So you might be a drug addict. You might be a sex addict. You might be addicted to pleasure, even food. If it's underactive, you might be quite numb to these things. You might not be seeking any of these pleasures in the world because you're depressed and the energy is not flowing. But if you're regulated, you have a capacity to take pleasure without craving, without being attached, without becoming addicted, and to let it go. Because there's a sense of fulfillment. There's a sense of natural contentment rather than excessive seeking. So we're always working to keep the organization of these chakras in accordance with our highest principles and in balance and harmony. If we're leaking too much of our energy out following sense pleasures, what we're doing is making decisions that are not in alignment with taking us closer towards our dream life, but rather we are choosing things which are often more pleasurable in the moment, but are taking us on the path of pursuing those pleasures in the world, which won't bring the fulfillment. It won't bring the satisfaction of living your purpose. So it's important to have an understanding of these centers so that you can better make choices and see where your energy is leaking. This is one of the reasons why individuals go through periods of celibacy or fasting, because it offers the energies in your body to organize in a different way. When we're not pursuing the pleasures in the world, we have an opportunity to tune more into ourself and to check in with what is our dream. Because the desires can skew our wants. Think about it this way. When you have a desire for sex, there are things that are physically happening. In your physiology, if you're a male or a female, testosterone is increasing. This testosterone is going into the bloodstream and it's changing your state of consciousness. And anyone who's been through puberty knows that sex hormones are really powerful. Sex hormones are really powerful, especially when you're young, because your higher brain areas, which correlate to the higher chakras, are not fully developed. So it's easier to act on these emotions or become a victim of your physiology based on the way that hormones are flowing through your system. When people are enraged in emotion or so filled with testosterone without the higher level inhibition and guidance of organizing principles and values, they're more apt to choose the easy and pleasurable way or to act on emotion. So let's jump back down to the first chakra now. We've explained a little bit about how they can be open and expanding or blocked, closed down, and how they can be balanced or overactive or underactive. So if I'm doing an assessment on somebody, I'm going to be looking at their physical body. This relates to their legs. Our legs is our connection to Earth, which pairs in perfectly with the idea, the concept of what is your connection to Earth. This is physically happening at the physical level based on how you stand, how you walk. Individuals who are not connected to the Earth typically don't have developed legs. To be honest, the nervous system, the nerves that run through the legs aren't very developed. They will often, if you're ungrounded, which is another term for your first chakra being off, you'll often lean onto one leg when you stand because there's no stability. Ideally, we want to grow like a tree where our first chakra and our roots and the lower centers are strong, stable, and they grow down deep so that we can rise up to the heights of spiritual and evolutionary development. By the way, I'm in a really hot sauna right now, so if by the end of this podcast it just turns into absolute chaos, you understand what's going on. So the first chakra, we want to assure that we have a lower physical body that is structured And there's an ideal balance here between strength, mobility, and flexibility. And this is what the yogic systems train in yoga asana, as well as various pranayama or breathwork practices, as well as qigong systems and other systems that have a integrated view of these underlying energetics. So what they do is they want to structure the lower body because it relates to our mind. Mind is the body, body is the mind. If somebody is ungrounded, now they could be having a circumstance in their life where they don't have stability because of low finances. So why would somebody want to do yoga and fix their legs if there's something going on in their bank account? How does that relate? And the wisdom and the understanding here is one, that circumstances don't matter, only your state matters. So these chakras carry information. And one way to think about this is your cells carry information. That information is encoded in the energy of your DNA, which means old stories and old emotions and beliefs are embedded at a cytoskeletal, so in the cells and in the bones and in the whole body. That's the heat getting to me. They are built into the way that you perceive reality. Meaning that if you carry a bunch of beliefs about lack, and you carry stories in you that you are poor, and this is going to change your thinking, which is going to change how you feel, which once again is going to change your physiology, which is going to change how you perceive the world. Which means you'll continue to be a victim to your own beliefs that are encoded from this lifetime and past lifetimes. So one of the ways that we can create change is we can create change in the physical body so that you feel more structured and stable regardless of circumstance, which is mind and body training. You may experience, if you've ever experienced a great loss of finances, it's like being knocked out at the knees, or even a bad breakup can destabilize you. So one of the first things that we can do, which is under our control, is to stabilize, to self-regulate, to begin to build our body and our mind stronger so that we can get up and we can face those challenges and we can rewrite the beliefs that are stored at each level of our body mind so that we can attract circumstances and perceive opportunities. So a quick breakdown on that. Attract means that if you're poor, as a fact that you have no monies, and you live that story as an embodied truth that you feel, you're going to perceive the world through that lens, and you're going to have a vibration in accordance with your beliefs, and you're going to come off as poor. Nobody wants to invest in somebody who comes off in a way that's not shining them in a good light. So one of the things you can do, and it's important here, one of the things you can do wherever you're at is to shift your state and to rewrite the stories so that you're vibrating, so that you are attracting, you're putting out where you want to be. It's a mindset thing, which is very common in sports. You have to have a champion's mindset. You have to think like a winner, so you act like a winner. But the thinking, the thought comes first, and we run against the old conditioning, the old samskara or habit patterns of the mind. So each of our chakras carries these old beliefs. So when we do an examination, I've talked to the physical a little bit, we're going to structure that, but we're also going to look at each of these aspects: safety, security, finances, connection to earth, connection to tribe, and discover what your beliefs are about them so we can begin to rewire your beliefs, which is rewiring your subconscious. And your subconscious is what is manifesting your reality, what is creating your reality, and what you perceive and notice. Most of the things that you perceive are not from your conscious mind. Your conscious mind is just seeing them, witnessing them. what you're actually calling in terms of circumstances in your life, is the product of your subconscious beliefs. So when you begin to rewire your beliefs in mind, you begin to perceive opportunities you wouldn't have perceived before. This opens up new pathways in both the mind and in your life, because you're literally creating new wiring between different parts of your body-mind, which is all represented in this chakra or energetic system. So we can access a chakra and how open it is. We can look at the beliefs and the concepts. We can structure the part of the body, and we can also regulate the region of the body. So for example, in Qigong, we work a lot with our organs. And the organ system that correlates strongly with the first chakra is your kidneys and your adrenal glands. And whenever you are stressed, your adrenal glands begin to fire, releasing cortisol and stress hormones for the system. Short term, this is fine. We can adapt to short term and hormetic stresses. Long term, this degrades the system, shuts down the immune system, prevents parasympathetic activity, which is your rest and digest system. So this is where, once again, we don't want excess. We don't want excess, and we don't want it to be underactive. We want perfect harmony, regulation. So we can work with the organ system. There's various healing sounds that help to vibrate any blockages from the energy body and the physical. We can do various types of Qigong massage on ourselves. And we can get at the belief structures tied to those fears, which will also cause the relief. So we can work at all of these levels. You'll tell this is a very comprehensive and can be a systematic way of approaching mind and body. And this is why I integrate the chakra system into my coaching system as just one of the systems and tools. There's various other ones from different traditions, such as Taoism, that can help you more powerfully align. And they're check-in points. They're check-in points because what you don't measure, what you don't observe, what you're not keeping track of, how do you know if you're doing well? How can you make goals? How can you do the work to reprogram new beliefs? One of the things I get people to do when they're reprogramming beliefs is to work with their new story as a mantra, as an affirmation that they're using daily so that they're assessing whether it's in alignment. And if you have financial struggles, and I just went through a number of big financial challenges, I was raising my capacity to call in more abundance. So I was challenged. This is what happens when we begin to challenge our beliefs. We're given circumstances as gifts, challenges as gifts, so that we can rewire the new beliefs and not fall back into the old patterns. Life is continually challenging you. It's built to challenge you. It's built to give you exactly what you need and nothing more, so that you can rise above that challenge and get to the next stage. So if you're working on finances, don't be surprised if you have a bunch of financial things come in your life. Insecurities, loss of a job. This is good. Change the way you think and approach problems. And that's how you know that you're making growth. Is when you run into similar circumstances that might have thrown you off in the past and you choose a higher path. You choose trust instead of falling back into fear. Because all of your negative emotions correlate with underactive or blocked chakras. If you're living in alignment, you're more prone to the positive emotions, which will keep your chakras balanced and aligned and keep them in a state of expansion and openness, and life will begin to happen for you. Let's move on to the second chakra. Now, there's so much I could share about these. They all have elements, they all have colors, they all have various different deities if you're going back into more of the socio-religious context. But what I want to share about this one is that it's associated with creativity, a certain type of creativity, sexuality, emotional expression, one-on-one relationships, It's a water center, very flowing emotions, creativity. What type of creativity, you ask? It's more like, sexual creativity. Like, think of a rock star. There's a higher creativity, which is more in accordance with like spiritual aesthetics. Think like the Roman cathedrals. Something really beautiful and aesthetic, but it's definitely not coming from the second chakra. It's definitely not, pour some sugar on me, baby. There's a different quality. We're expressing more from our emotions. We're expressing our emotions and our desires from these lower centers, for the most part, for worldly things. Whereas the higher order creativity, which more so correlates with the fifth chakra, is associated with truth and virtues and ideals and things of a higher energetic or spiritual expanded order. So we already talked about when this area is dysregulated, overactive. So what do we got to do to keep this one in balance? Well, I can tell you this, for all of them, breathing into them. The body-mind craves a certain stimulation to fulfill its need. Your genitals require a certain stimulation, otherwise they will just desire. And when we seek things outside of ourselves, we're trying to stimulate, in this example, our genitals, so that we receive that desire met. But the thing is, when we try to meet desires outside of ourselves, it's usually momentary, if at all. So you might have sex, you might be good for 5 minutes, you might be good for 5 days, and then you want more sex. So we're getting the dopamine, we're getting the reward, and we're getting temporary satiation, but that doesn't bring fulfillment. Fulfillment, and this is a yogic system thing, and of course found in other systems, but it's really important, comes when we can meet our own need with breath and with things within ourselves. And this creates a whole different energy, because we're no longer reliant, and we are not as apt to fall into craving and desire cycles of attachment and the suffering that comes when we don't get what we want. Because when we focus on what we have already within us, that same desire program isn't active, because we have what we need within us and we don't need to seek, and we can find greater satiation from that. Now, there's a really beautiful thing that comes, which is when you meet your own needs within, you can still have sex and food and sense pleasure, but you'll find a greater level of fulfillment and contentment rather than creating the same desire and attachment. So this is what the yogic practices, even asana, pranayama, but as we get more into meditation, can actually tune us into that deeper level of fulfillment, of being in connection with ourself, like our true self. So when we regulate an area, we mentioned we strengthen it, we mobilize it, and we create flexibility in it. So this is your hips. If you have a lot of tightness in your hips, there's some stored blocked energy there. We can breathe into the area, as mentioned. This helps to bring life force into that area and meets those needs that we're looking for, that we often look to meet outside of ourselves. We can tap the area. We can cleanse the area with fasting or massage, or, for the genital and anus region, we can do enemas and various different practices which clean them out. And then we can meet the needs that are associated with each chakra, which will bring harmony. The conversation here about one-on-one relationships and emotional expression. You have an overactive second chakra. Maybe there's something you're not that you need to tell somebody. And instead of doing that, you're suppressing that emotion. And because you're uncomfortable and you don't want to feel that discomfort, you're seeking something outside of yourself to give you pleasure or to numb you, which might be an addictive substance. So this is where you might create an addiction out of an unmet need for expression. And the chakras are all related because this is a holistic system. Meaning that when you express what you wanted to express and you communicate it, you're also helping to regulate your fifth chakra. So often when we have anything wrong, especially with the lower three chakras, it'll throw all the other chakras off. Because that's our foundations. If you throw your foundation off, you can't be a successful tree or build a successful building. The third chakra has to do with your power. This is like the highest point in your ego. Your confidence, your self-will, your discipline, regulation of exercise and food, all correlated with this area. This is the highest center of ego, because the next center up is the heart center, and that's when the I turns to the we. This is also the final worldly center, because the vibrations of the first three center accord with and relate most prominently to worldly things: money, sex, power, desires of the world. As I mentioned, these will not bring fulfillment. These will not bring satiation of those desires. You will be a hungry ghost with a bottomless stomach if you live in desire and make choices that only seek and pursue the things of the lower centers. But when you have love, then you can transcend those desires. Then you can offer something greater than yourself. And the selfishness of a life of pursuing those desires begins to diminish. And you're more open to, once again, new pathways in the nervous system, new pathways and dimensions of life. Because remember, these chakras are all dimensions of experience. So this third chakra, when it's out of balance, if it's overactive, overeating, overworking out, overstimulating yourself, overworking, pursuing power at an excessive, to an excessive degree. Underactive, all the things in opposite. Not eating enough, not enough motivation, lethargy, sluggish digestion. So the regulation here comes from the higher order centers. And once again, often when we have unprocessed emotion, we're not willing to feel it. We're not willing to love ourselves at some level. So when we drop into love or raise up to love, we can feel what we've been avoiding, and it will naturally regulate the lower centers. How do we regulate these? We can build a strong core, mobility, flexibility, and strength. We can cleanse our body and our organs. Our stomach, large and small intestine, liver, gallbladder, spleen, pancreas, get them working really well. Qigong has many practices, once again, that we can do that don't rely on herbs and things outside of ourselves, that rely on the breath. And that's the general structure of how these energetic systems work, is they teach us to use things that are within us. And this reprograms the cells. I think it's important to mention here that when you come into this earth as a baby, your spirit comes into body, your consciousness comes into body. You have to learn how to use the body. This is why babies sporadically kick and they just move their body in what seems like chaotic ways, because different neural systems are just firing and firing and firing. It's like they're dancing. And this is how the baby learns to correlate action, thought, action, and movement, and begins to wire itself so it knows how to walk eventually. And as you get older, you learn how to regulate your emotions. At least many of us learn to regulate our emotions to varying degrees. And then you learn to regulate your mind. Once again, even rarer, how to train and work with the mind. And this is what we're doing in this system, is we're learning to understand how to be a human, how to control the body, control desire, control the mind, because desires are in the mind. All desire programs, attachments, etc. are in the mind, and of course related to the body, but they're mental grooves, also known as samkaras. So this is what we're doing when we reprogram the desires and we practice things like temporary fasting and abstinence and celibacy. We're learning to reprogram so we're not caught in desire cycles that are unconscious. And as we begin to do this more consciously, we have more control. Just like the baby learns to walk, we can eventually learn to control the mind and the desires. Why control it? So that we can choose. So that we're not caught in just seeking needs of ourselves, which doesn't bring fulfillment. So that we can live in the vibration of love, which is the fourth chakra. It's associated with love and relationships, with healing. It's also associated with forgiveness and hatred. Once we get up to this chakra, energetically everything shifts. Because we're less about the physical, we're less about the self. We don't need to treat them quite the same. We work with them in a little different way. There's a lot of things in the heart which correlate with the second chakra as well when we deal with relationships, one-on-one. Intimacy. How do we raise the consciousness of our intimacy so that we're not just relating with people from our ego, not just from what we want and from our projections of the past and those old stories, but how can we both have a conscious relationship where two individuals can meet in the vibration of love? And in that way, we become more empathetic as people. We not only feel what we're feeling, but we're feeling what the other person is feeling and thinking what is best for the both of us, the we instead of the I. This is how consciousness raises. It shifts into a higher dimension, which is more energetic and less physical. And the love that you can attune to is also one of the best ways to reprogram the cells. I've said that a few times, and I'll mention it again, that the cells carry a memory. They carry stories, and those stories carry emotions. Those emotions create a vibrancy in the body. When you live in a state of love, your cells begin to harmonize to that high frequency of love. You're more prone to positivity. You're more prone to health because your body comes into greater harmony. Like many disease conditions, if you think about them, they're your body fighting your body. A cancer is you. It's cells within you that have gone rogue. And many of immune system conditions, so many things are things happening within your own body. So love is one of the best medicines because, and especially in spiritual healing, healing is about becoming whole. This is one of the reasons why many people treat symptoms and don't get better, or they get better and sickness returns, is because you didn't get at the underlying imbalance, which was at the level of belief or mind. And in order to do that, we need to become whole again. We need to become one with truth, the truth of who we are. And that's how we truly heal at the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual level, when we're connected with our true nature, with truth, which is in the fifth chakra, which is the organizing principle of truth. So when we have love, we have truth above that, and we can live in harmony with truth and love, we become healthier. Once again, this brings us into greater harmony and organizes the lower centers. When you start making decisions in accordance with the highest truth and your highest love, you will choose to do different things. You will follow different pathways. And if you've spent a lot of your life pursuing pleasure through alcohol and power, this will no longer seem as appealing. It'll perhaps be a part of your journey. Maybe it won't. This is why on the spiritual journey, some people become celibates and they're completely content. Now, some people become celibates and it creates a lot of amok in their life and shadow stuff, but it's available on the spiritual path to reach a state of liberation, of complete love and being in truth and in connection with your true nature and not needing the lower desires. And there's also a really beautiful way of integrating the lower desires into your life in a really beautiful and integrated way. So a lot of the work in the fourth chakra has to do with the heart. This could be inner child work. This could be forgiveness practices, ho'oponoponos, meditations to reprogram the stories as always. What are the stories about love? What was your relationship with your parents like? All of these things get sorted out at all these levels in my coaching. Let's move up to the fifth chakra here. So if it's blocked, typically you have trouble communicating, you have trouble expressing yourself, you have trouble perhaps singing. This is also what's known as the higher will. So you'll see a number of things represented at multiple levels that are connected to multiple parts. And the lower will is the personal will. This is like the ego's will. And the higher will is the spiritual will that is in pursuit of truth. And there's different types of energy that we can tap into. And I remember learning this not reading it in a book, but learning it when I started fasting. I did a 10-day fast one time, and for a while there I got so tired because calorically, if that's a word, or if I'm just getting really hot in the sauna, calorically, I didn't have much. My body was tapping into its reserves, of course, creating ketones, and that provides a certain amount of energy. But my body didn't have its regular fuel supply. But I could think of something and become inspired, and this would give me energy. I would feel inspired, and when I was doing this fast, I was also meditating and praying. What I would do is I would get into a gratitude riff. I'd just be on a roll of doing gratitude, saying my thank yous, giving my gratitudes for this earth, for this life, for my family, for these opportunities to grow, for my connection to nature. And also my body would just fill up with this energy. And I was tapping into something that wasn't calories. I was tapping into spiritual energy. And this is the kind of energy that gets cultivated on what I was doing in a vision quest to build up the spiritual energy. And from that energy, higher brain states were available, which was giving me access to the upper chakras and connecting me with visions, which is the sixth chakra, and the imagination and the things that I could do to serve in this good way. And I've done many vision quests and many fasting journeys and medicine work, and this is a common experience. And when I'm constantly eating and taking part in the pleasures of the world, I'm less apt to get these visions and tune into them because my energies are going towards digestion instead of higher brain states. It's going into my physical, and I'm energetically more tied in with the physical rather than the higher energetic. So this is why fasting and various different practices call for a temporary, at least, letting go of sex, food, and the various lower order sense pleasure things, and so that an individual can bring enough clarity in the system so that none of that energy is going towards digestion, so that that energy can literally raise up the spine and individuals can access higher states of consciousness and tap into the higher will, the higher spiritual will. So when I find a blockage on the fifth chakra, song, mantra, expressing emotion, maybe you need to talk to a very specific person and share a truth. Maybe it's related to the heart and forgiveness. Maybe you need to listen. It's also the center of listening. Because the fifth chakra is the throat, and then it's up the face to the eyes. And these things are related to dermatomes, which are the skin zones that correlate to various parts of the spine. So these are all related to various different parts of the nervous system. But they're also not. As I mentioned in the beginning, there's a more subtle energetic anatomy. Some of it correlates, but not all of it. So don't get too tied in thinking that all the nadis are the nerves and all the nerves are the nadis. It doesn't quite translate that way. But there's a lot of overlap. The major one being the spinal cord and the Sushumna nadi, or the Taiji pole in Taoism. This relates to your parathyroid and thyroid gland, which sits in the throat, so assuring that the hormones are regulated there, which relate to your metabolism, your calcium. The sixth chakra. Sixth chakra relates to light, imagination, non-duality, your mind. Relates to the soul. Higher sensitivities, such as all the clairs, clairvoyance, clairaudience, because we're moving into the energetic and your subtle energy body, of which several systems talk about several different ones, depending on how you want to categorize them. But they move out from the most dense vibrations, which is the physical, and then to the emotional and the mental, and there's various other bodies, they call them in different systems. And these are all you. You know, if you think about this in terms of science, you are your physical body, but you're also the atoms and the electromagnetic fields that surround you, your auric fields, in other words. So your sixth chakra has a lot to do with the mind, and once again, tapping back into this idea of higher order organization. If your mind is out of order, it's hard to have a regulated body and routines. It's hard to do anything, depending on the degree of your disorganization of mind. You know, when it's extremely disorganized, you're in a mental hospital or you're a vegetable. If it's less disorganized and you're going through overthinking, well, how good can you do all the other lower order things, such as, you know, do your career work, have grounding in your body, because there's so much disorganization going on. The body needs the mind to have a certain level of stillness to be embodied, because the energy and the vibration of the mind is very high. Mind can move faster than the speed of light. You can think about one thing and another thing. You can go from here to there. But the mind can discarnate in some sense. Many people are very much in their mind and not in their bodies, because when the mind is too busy and it's too caught up in thinking, it's not feeling. And if it's not feeling, it's not present in the physical. And there's no real, like, you can keep going deeper and deeper into the sensations in the body. This is what I know from thousands and thousands of hours of meditation. You can continue to feel more and more and more and more. And many people just live on the surface of their body because their mind hasn't really soaked into their body, because they're so busy thinking and doing things and thinking about thinking and talking to themselves. The mind takes training and practice. So I teach people how to organize their mind, how to meditate, how to be embodied in their meditation. So it's not just a mental activity. They're not just caught in thinking, which is the most common thing that most people talk about when they try to meditate. Oh, I couldn't stop thinking. One, it's not the whole purpose is to create no thought, though it can be a portion of the practice. And two, most people are just doing seated meditation and not learning the systems of Qigong and yoga that I teach, which allow for effective meditation when practiced properly within the proper order of the system and done intelligently. The highest center is the seventh center, and I correlate this one in with what I call the one love, as I mentioned in the beginning. The one love being your purpose, your dharma, your connection to the all. And when you're living your purpose at this highest level, everything you do is your purpose. It doesn't matter if you're currently doing the act, which is your divine career or whatever you have chosen for your life. And not everyone has a divine career. Some of us are meant to be in a monastery or what have you. Your spiritual path is the path you have chosen for yourself in this lifetime. which brings you into your highest level of harmony, not just with yourself, but all of your relations. This means all the people and the planet. And in order to tap into this, as you can tell by the very definition of it, it's not just about you. It's not just about your selfish pleasures. You have to raise your consciousness enough to know what gifts you have to give the earth and how can you give those so it has an effect on the earth. Once again, this doesn't mean you're traveling around the earth or you have the biggest company in the world that's saving the world. You can be a monk in the forest and be shifting your vibration into the highest alignment. It's whatsoever you are called to do at this level. And my whole coaching program is about helping you to discover what this is. And then all the other organization of the chakras, the beliefs, everything is the work we do together to help clear out any old stories that are not in alignment, because we carry an identity from our childhood. We carry the ways in which we weren't loved from our childhood, and we project those or seek those in relationships so we can find completion, until we rewrite the stories so that we can attract in the love that we actually want at the soul level, not at the personality level that was inherited from the world and our conditioning in our childhood. When we're tapped in at the highest level, we have everything we need when we need it. And this might mean financial abundance if it's necessary for your mission. Or it might just mean you're a forest monk, to give that contrast again and again. Having everything you need when you need it doesn't even mean that you have food, because if you don't need food at that moment, you won't need food at the moment. You can have your breath and you can still live in contentment for that moment. These are mindset shifts which don't require anything outside of the self. This is why virtues live in the higher centers, and they lift us up. Faith, love, contentment, devotion. And these kinds of qualities, when you embody them, when you practice them, these are part of the practices that I help people with, they teach you to change your vibration, and this will naturally reprogram the cells of your body. Those old stories. The center has to do with your relationship with God, if you call God God, or if you call God source or energy or the all or the universe or the Tao. It does not matter. It's your relationship with the field of energy that is all-encompassing, which is you, which is your higher mind, which is not separate from you, though from your individual self you are perceiving many things in the higher realms or God as separate, and that's the experience you're having, which is true. But you can have, and it's possible to have, or even live in, a higher state of awareness, which you're not just perceiving the world from an individual, but you can simultaneously, or for moments, experience yourself as the all, and not as the individual, and both are true. When we begin to touch into that connection, when we begin to tune into the silence behind all sounds, the all-pervading energy that connects all through love and harmony with truth, which is Dharma, which is the universal order, when we begin to live in that vibration, your whole body and mind is at ease. Emotions at ease. When everything is at ease, no disease. Disease. It is a disruption in your ease that causes disease. Imbalance. Imbalance that is the product of choices from the past which would not have been made in accordance with the highest principles. For example, excessive drug use, a lower order energy leak, if done repeatedly, can lead to, for example, liver cirrhosis with alcohol. That would not have happened if you had been fulfilled and not sought that desire outside of yourself. All disease is the product of these lower energy leaks. And it could be this life, it could have been a past life. We need not get mad at ourselves, we need not beat ourselves up. But just an awareness of this helps to get at the root if we are facing a current imbalance. This is the way that medical Qigong and Chinese medicine views it. These are imbalances. They like it. I like it. It's a nicer term than disease, which has more of like a death sentencey thing, right? Imbalance just means it's like, oh, I ate too much. I'm imbalanced. I'll come back to balance. And it's just like, I like the word balance because you are constantly balancing. It's like walking a tightrope. You don't get to a point where you're completely still. If you're walking a tightrope, there's constant micro movements to keep your body upright and stable. And that's life. We're in constant motion. So we're always balancing and coming out of balance. So it's no shame when we're out of balance, but it's a need to come back into harmony. Because if we don't, we'll go deeper and deeper down that pathway. So when you have a system, an awareness that you can track all of these things, it's harder to fall off and it's easier to know where you're leaking energy out. And this is literally an energy leak. The energies, this is why the system of yoga is all about the spine. The system of Qigong is all about the spine. Because these aren't just conceptual things. The energy in your body will literally change. It will shift and it will open up new pathways, as I mentioned, nerve pathways as well as energetic pathways, which will tap you more into latent abilities. This is your potential, because the chakras have information, and when they expand and open, you tap more into the field of energy around you, which has a sense of being a blueprint. You have an evolutionary blueprint of your journey. You can think of your spiraling DNA becoming active as you evolve. There is a blueprint, though there are many pathways of this evolution. It's not all fated. You have certain destiny, but you have free choice as well. So when we begin to expand and awaken our potential, the best way to do this is that same analogy in the beginning. It's like a plant. We're in the perfect environment of harmony within ourselves first. Circumstances don't matter, only our state matters. We harmonize our state and our beliefs with in accordance with the highest, and we begin to grow, and we attract the exact people and circumstances who can create the conditions for our optimal growth and their optimal growth. It really is the most beautiful thing. And when you're living in this way, it doesn't matter where you're at. If I'm on the mountain praying, eating mushrooms perhaps, and doing what I love, that's my purpose then. But this here is also my purpose, being in this ridiculously hot sun and getting to the end of this podcast. And it doesn't matter if I'm driving in my car to work, that's my highest purpose. When I am living in accordance with this and I am in harmony, I feel that. I feel that in my bones. And I don't need anything outside of myself. So I'm not seeking things outside. And this is my prayer, to help people to find that dream and come into that level of alignment, which will naturally put them on the path towards, not on the path. They'll be where they need to be, but they'll also be walking the path. What's that silly saying about the destination that everyone knows? That one. So a little bit of review here. I used the 7 chakras because they form a scaffolding, and I use them in a number of different ways. But since I've already explained this whole thing, I'm not going to throw in a bunch of other information to add to this. I use them to organize your mind, to give you a scaffolding to organize your mind, so that you can check in at all these levels with the concepts, with the areas of the body, and with practices that you can do. Eventually, you can design a system, or I can offer you a system that integrates all of these levels. This is why I have a very physical practice. I have a heart-centered practice. I have a podcast and I sing. I use my mind and imagination because I'm tapping into all of my dimensions of potential. And I have a prayer practice, a silence practice to connect with my highest. But you will eventually find yours. This is why I don't give prescriptions that are blanket for everybody. It's about finding the practices. This is why I trained in multiple systems, so that I could offer more of a diversity, but also could also not just speak one language. If I was just teaching yoga, not everybody's body is one that loves asana. Some people are martial artists, and I can teach the system and use martial arts instead of yoga. I can teach qigong, I can teach working out. Doesn't matter what you do, we can find something, and you know what you love. So once you get the download of how these work and how to organize them, you become self-reliant in your process. And as a coach, I'm here to cheer you on. I'm here to offer you space and the vibrancy of the way that I live and how I've embodied this system. And naturally, it is such that I will attract people that are in attune or in alignment with this system. So if that's you, if this system calls out to you in a really beautiful way, if there's resonance here, if you want to learn more, this is just the surface I have scratched here, then I would love for you to reach out, and I would love to share more information. I have a little workbook on these. It gives all the chakras and a bunch of information I didn't share here, and then a breathwork practice on how to balance each chakra. And you could go through all of them, and this will align the whole system in a really good way. I offer 1-hour coaching calls, which help give introductions. If you want to go for a deeper dive, that would be a 3 or 6 month container to work with me, in person or online, for both of those options. So there you have it, the 7 chakra system, organizing your life in accordance with the highest principles, reprogramming your limiting beliefs so that you can rewrite your story in accordance with your greatest dream and love. Remember, circumstances don't matter. Only your state matters. I Om.